Section 5 of Weird Tales Double Feature, The Death Pit and In Cashless Garden by Lillian Schisgall. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain, read by Ben Tucker. The Death Pit, Chapter 5. The Piper is Paid. Gilbert's illness became worse during the day, so alarmingly worse that Agatha did not leave his bedside, though her eyes were heavy with lack of sleep. Though she could have slumped down to the floor in sheer weariness, the gaunt woman maintained her vigil. Every few moments her bony hand caressed the boy's fevered forehead, and at such times his ravings abated. Timothy's endurance was not so great. In the afternoon he threw himself upon a bed on the lower floor, and fell into a deep sleep. He dozed off during one of the intervals in which Gilbert was quiet, and there on the bed he sprawled and emitted loud rhythmic snores. Agatha listened, and somehow she sensed an intangible injustice in the situation. Why was she, who had extricated her husband from a dreadful danger, sitting awake, suffering at the bedside of her son while Timothy slept? That had ever been her husband's way. During moments of danger he was nervous, almost cowardly, relying entirely on his wife's ingenuity. When the danger had passed, he forgot it, left her with the after-effects while he slept. Yes, there was injustice in his attitude. She grumbled, her mouth hardened grimly. If it weren't for Gilbert, she would not have tolerated Timothy's ways. For Agatha Cruz, though somber and unattractive and unsentimental, still retained one feminine virtue. She loved her son with all the passionate ardor a woman can bestow upon an only child. If ever she possessed a tender instinct, it was vented in motherly affection. She would have sacrificed everything for Gilbert. He was the one thing which made her colorless life worth living. For him she did everything, gave everything. And even if she did not realize it, her husband shared those emotions. He felt no particular love for his wife, but for his son, the only offering he had ever made to the world, he nursed a strange, unexpressed masculine adoration. It was seldom shown, seldom permitted to evince itself in actions, but under his brusqueness the love for his child slumbered ever. It was deep, passionate. Were anything to happen to Gilbert, were the boy to die of his fever, life would have become worthless, empty. And so these parents, merely tolerating each other, were held in family ties by their son. They were wondering what his fever would do to him, wondering in unexpressed fear. And yet Timothy could sleep, a strange, unfathomable man. He was roused when darkness had once more fallen over the countryside. He blinked up into the sallow, bony face of Agatha. She had lighted the oil lamp, and its sickly yellow light played upon her features. She shook his shoulder. "Wake up, Tim, and get something to eat. Gil's fallen asleep." With much grumbling, Timothy rose. They ate meagerly at the rickety table, the flickering lamp between them. As he peered at her weirdly illumined countenance, at the black shadows under the cheekbones and under the eyes, he said, "You look tired, Agatha." It was an unusual attention on his part, even to notice her weariness. Quickly she glanced down at her plate. "Been sitting with Gil," she explained. "How is he? Seems quiet now." "Yes, just fell into a doze, but he's worse than yesterday. Much worse." Wonder." His words were interrupted with stunning suddenness. Agatha jumped from her chair. He too rose, gaped at the wall. From the upper floor had come the piercing scream, and Gilbert's voice shrieked wildly,
"The doctor's in the well! I see him, Pop, I see him! He's in the bottom of the well! I can see him, Pop, I can see him again!"
"Delirious again," whispered Agatha. Timothy rushed up the stairs, his wife behind him. They found the boy writhing in agony on his cot. His face was crimson, blistered. The lips, parched and sore, squirmed as he prattled insanely of the doctor in the well. Timothy caught his son's hands, gripped them tightly as if the pressure would ease the suffering of the child. Beside him, Agatha looked on, stern and worried, breathing hard.
"He's worse than ever," she murmured. "Worse than ever. I'm afraid, Tim."
"He'll be all right after a while," he assured her, though he felt no confidence in his assertion.
"All day he's been saying he wants to see the well."
Timothy shuddered perceptibly, but he answered, He'll be all right. He'll be all right.
But I'm afraid, Tim.
They remained at the bedside while Gilbert's delirium became steadily more turbulent. Gazing anxiously upon the stricken boy, Agatha forgot her fatigue. Forgot that she had not slept in 2 days, that she had not eaten. Even that murder had been committed in the lurking shadows of her home. She thought of Gilbert only, of the danger in which her son was. And after an hour she seized her husband's arm and declared,
Tim, we've got to get another doctor. Get Dr. Lute from Hurleyville. That's nearest. We've got to.
At the suggestion, Tim changed. His features had been lined with commiseration for the sick child. Now, as he turned in amazement to his wife, pity gave way to terror. His mouth opened wide. "Get another doctor?" he gasped. "We can't."
"And why can't we?"
Because, don't you see, Agatha? The other doctor will hear Gil blabber about the well and...
Blabber about the well,
she murmured, dazed. And then she understood. For Timothy's safety, no one must enter their home before Gilbert recovered from his delirium. And for Gilbert's safety, a doctor must be called. A predicament which brought into conflict her maternal instincts and her desire to shield her husband. She paled as she stared at the boy. If she didn't summon a physician, who could say what might happen? If she did... A slight shudder coursed through her gaunt body. Appealingly, she looked at Timothy. This was a time when Agatha Cruz needed sympathy, needed a strong arm and a strong mind to guide her, needed them desperately. She was tired and shaken by the events which had fallen upon her. Within her something was drooping hopelessly. The burdens she bore were fast becoming too heavy. She needed support. Instead, she received from her husband a look of misery, of cowardice, of fear. She found herself forced to decide without help, and she did.
Tim, she said softly as she rose, I'm going to phone Dr. Lute.
Without another word, she descended the stairs, creaking under her weight. In the dark chamber on the lower floor, she threw a shawl about her shoulders in preparation for the walk to Drake's. It was an old shawl, gray and lifeless, conforming with her personality. Though she eyed the food on the table rather wistfully, she determined to telephone for the physician of the neighboring town before she did anything else. The fantastic glow from the oil lamp fell upon her worn features. She blinked at the light, for her eyes smarted. But she had reached a decision, and she moved to carry it out. Timothy must be sacrificed for Gilbert. Mother love was the most powerful. But even as she strode forward grimly, Timothy clattered down the steps. He rushed to the door, placed his broad back against it. As he faced her, he appeared gigantic, towering, even menacing. The sickly light poured upon his distorted, puffed face. "You ain't going," he snarled. Pausing, she eyed him coolly.
"I am."
"I say you ain't, and you ain't." Her lips parted in an ugly sneer, hideous on her sallow features.
"You're a coward, Tim. You ain't a man, you're a dog."
"Don't care what you say," he rasped back. "I ain't gonna hang 'cause you think the kid needs a doctor. He don't."
He'll die if I don't get one."
Timothy gulped, glanced away in fear, but immediately his bravado reasserted itself. "He won't die, that's just your talk. You're going to stay right here. No doctor, nobody comes into this house till the kid stops blabbering about the well." Agatha's lean arms were crooked as she placed her hands on her hips in a challenging gesture.
"Suppose I do go," she said.
"I ain't going to let you."
"What'll you do?"
"Keep you here, that's what."
"By force? With your hands?"
"Yes, with my hands." She smiled bitterly.
"It won't be the first time you beat me," she said.
But slowly she turned and went back to the bed. Upon it she sank thoughtfully. There was no sense in opposing Timothy when so violent a mood was upon him. She knew her husband. He would beat her, throw her upon the floor, compel her with brutal force to remain at home if she attempted to call a doctor. She did not mind the pain his fists inflicted. What troubled her was the knowledge that a beating from her husband would incapacitate her for days. It had always had that effect. and there would be no one to care for Gilbert. No, she could not throw her strength against the power of Timothy. She would wait at least until he slept. The fact that in a short time Gilbert subsided into deep slumber lent Timothy cause for malicious gloating. "See," he told her as she gazed wanly upon the boy. "He's better now, ain't he? Sound asleep, quiet. Suppose you'd called the doctor, it would have been a useless risk. Who was wiser, you or me?"
"You, of course," she replied sardonically.
"Sure, I was right, and now the kid's asleep. Suppose we take the opportunity to rest. Come on, Agatha, let's go down. You need sleep, if you're half as tired as I am."
"Half as tired as you?"
she repeated weakly and smiled. Oh, how unutterably stupid and cowardly and vile she was discovering her husband to be. Without undressing, they threw themselves on the bed. The lower floor, with the light blown out, was impenetrably black. It took Timothy but a moment to fall into sonorous sleep. But Agatha lingered on the border of wakefulness. She would wait a while, she promised herself, until Timothy would no longer notice her movements. Then she would steal off to telephone Dr. Loop. Gilbert needed him. Needed him. She dozed off, slept for a long, long time. Unconsciously, she snuggled against the warmth of her husband's huge body, and her arm crept about him. Two lumbering farm toilers, suited to each other, yet unhappy. It must have been near dawn when she awoke with a start. She was trembling as she sat up in bed, and her hand rose to her lips. She looked about the blackness, saw nothing. Yet, strangely, she sensed a premonition that something was wrong. Beside her, Timothy still slept. She thought of the doctor, and she cursed herself. Why had she permitted weariness to conquer her? She must go now, now! Quietly, she pushed herself off the bed, groped for the shawl, threw it around her ungainly back. She started for the door and saw with a gasp that it was open. A breeze, blowing in upon her, scattered her straggling hair and brought a queer dread. Without a sound, she turned, hurried up the steps to Gilbert's room. A moment later, she flew down, flung herself desperately upon her husband, shook him to wakefulness. She was screaming, Tim, Gil is gone, he's gone!" He blinked up through the darkness. What?"
"Get up, Gil is gone, I tell you. He's gone. He's not in his bed, and the door's open."
She was quivering as if the fever had caught her. She actually dragged Timothy out of the bed by sheer force. And as the meaning of his wife's words sank into his consciousness, he suddenly displayed an access of energy. He hissed a fearful oath, dashed up the stairs. Instantly he returned, dazed, staggering. "You're right," he said. "He's gone."
"And the door's open."
"God," he whispered. Then he sprang to the door and with all the power of his lungs shouted, Gil! Son, where are you?" There was no answer. As he called again, his voice throbbed with the anguish of his soul, anguish which Agatha shared, felt even more keenly. They tore out into the night, rushing about desperately in a wild search. And as she ran blindly, Agatha Cruz yelled hysterically.
"It's your fault, Tim. Your fault. You wouldn't let me go for the doctor. That might have saved the boy. You wouldn't let me go. I tell you, I swear. Do you hear? I swear if anything happens to him, I'll tell everybody everything. About the murder. Everything."
Timothy was suffering and torture too great to permit his saying anything but, "If anything happens to him, I don't care what you tell everybody." And then suddenly he came to an abrupt stop, while all of the strength oozed from his quaking body. His legs sagged, his eyes were dilated. He crumpled to his knees, gaping before him at the ground. Agatha came to his side. With a moan of horrible comprehension, she fell beside him and gazed in terror-stricken fascination at the ground. A finger, trembling, moved forward to point at the dreadful thing. Before them yawned the open hole of the well. The boards had been pushed back.
He wanted to see the well,"
whispered Agatha, each word forced out of a choking throat. Without a sound, the quivering Timothy bent forward. He lit a match, cupped it in his hands, and held it over the pit. Mother and father peered down, peered in fearful awe. And then Agatha Cruz collapsed against her husband's shoulder. Far, far down in the well, Scarcely visible in the dim light of the match flame lay the still body of little Gilbert, sprawling across the form of Dr. Philemon. End of the Death Pit.